Hello, everybody. How y'all doing today?
Doing good.
Excellent. Can everybody hear me? Alrighty. So today, what we're here to discuss when it comes to the application is getting that stuff into the application itself. And with that in mind, I don't really have any slides because I'm just going to start with, well, jumping into the applications themselves. So as we go, what I will do is just take questions. If you have questions as we hit certain parts of the application, feel free to let me know. Now, I'm going to have kind of do two applications in parallel here because there are two types of application systems that are out there. There's AMCAS and there's everything else. So let me share my screen. And here's AMCAS. And this is what we're going to be using for MD schools. So how many of you all are pre-med? So like one person out of the group right now is pre-med. So we got a pre-PA. So you're going to be using the other system. But the MDs and the people that are applying pre-med will be using both systems. So there is AMCAS here, which is this one. And the application will look like this once you get it started. And you'll see, okay, you get an AMC ID and you have to put in all your demographic information. And this particular application is a lot more linear than we see the other type of applications, which is basically pre-PA, pre-dental, and even for you pre-meds, the application system to apply to DO schools is also like all those others. So if you're going to be applying both DO and MD, you're going to be doing both AMCAS, which is this one, and also an application that looks a lot like which is this one particular one is ADSAS, and this is like a COMAS or OptomCAS or PTCAS or any of those other CASs out there. They're based on this sort of background software called Liaison. And as you see up here in the title there, we see Liaison CAS. So it's ADSAS for this particular application, which is the dental application, and Liaison. And so Liaison is just the software on which it's running. And this one is not nearly as linear as the pre-med application is for the MD schools. For the DO schools, you would see something like this. So for this reason, I will spend pretty much the rest of the time on the liaison type applications because you're going to be entering all the same kind of information into AMCAS as you are into ADSAS or ACOMAS or PTCAS, et cetera, all those other applications. So to be the most universal I can be, let's talk primarily about these liaison applications, knowing that you will have a distinct difference between liaison and the AMCAS application. Is everybody clear on what the distinction there is? Give me a thumbs up if you understand. It's a subtle one, but it can be a big one. So the big difference is AMCAS is only for MD schools, and it basically is a linear version of the application. You have to do your identifying information first, then you have to put in your schools attended, then you have to put in your bio information, then you put in your coursework, then and so on and so forth. You have to enter everything on the AMCAS application in order before it'll let you move on to the next section. Whereas all the other applications, the liaison applications, which include DO for you pre-meds, and then all those other application systems is less linear. You can add things as you go. So the DO application will not be like AMCAS. It's going to be like this one right here. So the major difference is the linearity of the two applications. So AMCAS just makes you do things in a certain order, whereas The liaison apps don't. Kind of annoying, but it is what it is. So one of the first things you got to put in is the personal information. And we'll start there with this particular application. So agreement statements, both the applications are going to have these types of things. But basically what this is, oops, I have to sign out and log in and back again because it probably timed me out. There we go. So there's going to be a bunch of this legalese stuff saying, I agree to all the application agreements and da 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 da. If you don't check the boxes, you're not going to be able to apply. So read through this, but for the most part, these are things you just have to accept as far as how the application process works. The one thing where you do have some choice on both applications is right here, where release of information to health professional advisors, that would be us here at the HPA office. And so you can either choose yes, which means AdSAS or whatever application system it is, we'll be able to look you up in, and we can find your information in there, and we can, know how your application progress is proceeding. And then you can choose no if you don't want to share that with us. That honestly is up to you whether or not you share that information with us. So that is a choice you can make. It doesn't affect how the rest of your application works. CASPA is also a liaison app. That is correct. Literally the only non-liaison application out there at this time is going to be your AMCAS for MD schools. All right. So you got to say yes to all these things before you can move on. So yes, checking this box, checking this box. I'm going to go ahead and check all these boxes, save and continue. Continue to the next section. So here's where you got to put in your info. All the fun stuff that you would like to put in. They already got my name. If you have a nickname, you can always put that in. That is in both applications as well. This is where you're going to be seeing probably some changes from what you've seen in years past. Because of some things that have happened recently, we're going to be just biological sex, it's male, female, or declined to state. Although we're seeing many of the applications are probably sticking to, we might be able to say non-binary in here. And then, of course, your birth information and all that fun stuff. As you can see, I'm going to skip over that just because I don't want to put in my birth information in front of you guys, so you can't steal my identity. But whatever it is that you put in here, this is going to be specific to just this one application. You can put in different information in different apps. Say you're applying MD and DO, although I wouldn't, just to make sure that you're keeping everything consistent. So this is pretty much standard information. Contact info. This is going to be your address where you're going to receive mail. Now, let me say this. When you're filling out this application, use an address at which you can receive mail. If you plan on changing your address, maybe stick to address like at your parents' house where you'll always receive something, or at a PO box. That way, you can make sure you get any communications between you and the school via snail mail. So that does not have to be the same as your permanent address. Your permanent address is what's going to establish your residency. So if you want to establish California residency, make sure your permanent address is in the state of California. If you want to receive your mail at somewhere else, that's okay, but just try to have an address that's not movable, if that makes sense. Use your current phone number, and then create yourself a email address just to apply. You cannot do not rely on your UC Davis email addresses to apply to med school or dental school or all that, because you already saw what happened probably a couple years ago where it was email for life and then it was not email for life, and so all the email addresses got deleted. But then they came back with some former student thing. You don't know if that's going to change or not. Just create yourself a professional looking email like first name dot last name .md or first name dot last name .dental or something like that at Gmail or Outlook or something to that effect, that all of your application emails will go through, something that's not at risk of disappearing. You don't want to use a personal email address if it's something like, Hot Pants 93 or something like that. Not the greatest email address to be using for your application. Just have a consistent professional looking email address that you can use that you will always maintain access to. So if it's a Davis email address, we suggest you don't use that. School email addresses aren't the best to use. So any questions on sort of the things I went through on this page as far as potential residency issues, where you get your mail, where you get your email? So remember the permanent address, that's how you're establishing your residency for your application. All right, the next chunk, citizenship information. This is, are you from the US? Are you not from the US? Do you have a green card? This is the other place where you're going to be establishing your state of residence. So you're going to want to make sure your legal state of residence is the same as your permanent residence. That's the best way to do it to make sure there's the least questions. If you're DACA or you have a visa, you would also indicate that here. Environmental factors. This is like, should you be considered as somebody who has a disadvantage? Now, the AMCAS application does this in a slightly different way. They have what is called it used to be called the disadvantage statement. Now it's called the other impactful experiences statement. So that's going to come into this place in place of the environmental factors here. But they're going to say, are you disadvantaged? And the criteria for that, you can see they have the National Institutes of Health criteria linked here. But that's going to be things like growing up in a neighborhood with a school with free or reduced lunch, or predominantly free or reduced lunch, being in an abusive household, being in an abusive relationship, growing up with as an underserved minority, something like that. So they will ask these types of things, even though I know in the sort of world today, some of those things are not to be considered, but when coming into applications now, based on the current environment, but they end up speaking to how far you've come. It's not about you just being an underrepresented minority. It's about how far you've come as far as where you've come from in life to where you are now. And so this is a place where you want to point things out, like what are your statuses and where did you come from, so that when you compare it to your personal statement, it'll show you where you are today. Parent or guardian. Oh, by the way, the environmental factors, these are all your choice. You do not have to enter things into this section or into that essay in the AMCAS if you don't have anything to say. Although, definitely think about your unique circumstances, and do you have unique experiences that help you stand out among your peers? Those are important things to put in here. Your parent or guardian, if you have parent or guardians to include in here, which basically means if you're less than 26, you're probably going to be including parents in here. If you're older than 26, you don't need to. Race, ethnicity, this question may change by next year. We don't know exactly how this is playing out, given all the changes nationally right now with this stuff. So we'll have to play this by ear. But again, this is an optional question anyway. You don't have to enter it. And then other information, this is going to be things like, were you in the military? Have you ever been to dental school or med school or whatever before? You have to indicate that that's something going on. What is your language situation? Have you been into another school? Like, if you've been to a different dental school before you're applying to a new dental school. Academic probation, things like that. You do want to indicate if you got brought up with OSSJA on something. Just be honest. So this is the place to put all these pieces of information that will probably come up in a background check or something like that. Because before your the parental information, if you're under 26, is because you're still potentially financially dependent upon your parents at that point. You will still have to provide parental information on, say, financial aid documents if you're less than 26. That is still a thing right now. So yes, to get that insurance until you're through 25, you gotta claim your parents as financial backers. So if there's special circumstances in your life where that is an unreasonable thing to do, you can always discuss it with the app service about maybe that's not maybe you're estranged from your parents or whatever. That could be a reason to get that taken off your application. Would just your full name be okay to use an email for application? Yes. I would say full dot last. You probably want to have something additional to it though, because my guess is unless your name is truly unique, which yours might be, I'm not sure. You might run into somebody else who has the same, and you might have to pop a number after it, or that's why I might say your field or something like that can go into it. We're not sure how much longer this is going to retain. Like so far, it's been even through the 2024 application cycle, which is this application is how the COVID-19 has impacted you. So we want to keep this focused on the positive, not the negative. Like it gave you opportunities, new opportunities to pursue new things. This is still also on the AMCAS application. It could disappear next year. We just don't know. We don't know how long it's going to be retained on the application. Would you have to put both parents down? I would suggest if both parents are part of that financial picture that yes, you should put both of the parents down. Education interruption, military service, etc. Manual dexterity. This is particular just to the AdSAS application. Are you first gen, etc. So there might be another question like, have you been, have you committed or been convicted of a felony? Have you been convicted of a misdemeanor? Those may also show up on your application. They probably will at some point for the background check. So be honest, be complete. This is not necessarily the first section you need to complete because there's some other places where I usually suggest you get to first. However, again, on AMCAS, you have to do things in order. On AMCAS, that is the first stuff that they really start asking you for, that biographic information in schools attended. So those things tend to come first. That COVID statement would come down here in the essays portion. Now, the place where I would want to jump to right away for almost everybody, if you're doing a non-AMCAS application, which is pretty much everybody except including the pre-meds, go to academic history. And you want to get into the transcript entry section as soon as possible. This is one of the first things you want to request is your transcripts. Because transcripts can take quite some time to actually make it to the application. So first you would want to put in the college or university attended. So I'm going to add mine. I went to Central Michigan University. And did I obtain a degree? Yes, I did. Degree awarded was a Bachelor of Science. I earned it in August, and don't make fun of me. August of 1995. Select your major. I was a chem major. And I had a minor, was mathematics and a bunch of other junk. I see that question. I'll come to that in a second. And if I had a double major, another degree, et cetera, and then semester, because that's what it was, and am I still attending? No. When did I first attend? Fall, August, 91. Last was summer, August, 95, because I did one extra semester. Save. So you just got to enter all your information in for your particular schools. You should not order your transcripts early because you need to have them entered into here first before you request them to make sure they get attached to your application. You might order an official copy of your transcripts for yourself, but as far as your transcript goes as part of your application, you need to add them like we're doing right now to your application so that now see how it says official transcript underneath my school, not yet received. Now I can order it and make sure my transcript gets attached to the appropriate school to the application that I needed. This is also true for AMCAS. So you don't want to request your transcripts until you do this process. And for most schools, including Davis right now, you can order it pretty straightforward. Just go to Davis's registrar's site, and you'll see, I believe we use Parchment right now. So you'd set up Parchment and then follow the directions here and do all the ordering of your transcripts. Don't order a mailed paper transcript. If you want to get one for yourself, do that as a separate copy. So far, I have not, like recent history, I've not seen many schools at all, if any, that require you to do this with paper and pen, like mailed transcripts. Almost everybody out there is doing these Parchment or National Student Clearinghouse transcripts at this point. And once you do all that process, you can just say, I ordered my transcript. It says not yet received. Once you've done your side on Davis, done all the information in Davis, and done this, eventually the two will sync up and you'll see that it will change from not yet received to received. And that's what you want to do right away. That's one of the first things with the application, though. Get in here, get your transcript set up, which means in AMCAS, you want to go ahead and get all the school attended stuff, the biographic information filled in, so you can access coursework, so you can request those transcripts. But no, notice I can't just jump into coursework in AMCAS because it tells me I have to finish those other sections first. That's why AMCAS is a little bit of annoying to work with, because you got to do it in their chosen order. Yes, I would not order your transcripts until you get your school set up in the application, which means you need to wait for the application to open for that season. Correct. And then Stormy asked, so yes. So like I said, I did this, then I visited Parchment, follow the steps that Davis says to do on Parchment, and make sure I follow all the stuff on both ends. Like, because you're going to need this ID number from this end. So that's why you copy it. And you're going to need some information from Davis to do this on Parchment's website. And then once you do that, just say I ordered my transcript, and boom, it'll all work. So it's a lot less hairy than it used to be because everything is pretty much digital. If you went to a very, very tiny school, you might have some issues. Those are one-offs. That's something we can deal with. Come to drop-ins or come to an appointment, and we can help you figure that one-off kind of stuff out. Because there's some weird stuff that can happen once in a while. All right, so you want to add all of your colleges and universities attended. So if you were in high school and you did some early college high school classes, like say you did a high school, or you did a college math class while you were still in high school, maybe you took calculus in high school at a college, you will have a transcript from that community college at which you did that work. So you need to request a transcript for that community college. If you did any classes during the summer at a community college, even if they transferred into Davis, that doesn't matter if they transferred into Davis, you need to request a transcript or set up a school and request a transcript from that school, from that community college that you did during the summer. So whatever schools you attended in any capacity need to be listed on here. And just for a note, if you do any post-bac work, so if I look up University of Davis or University of California, Davis, notice there's two different ones. So if I went to Davis as an undergrad, that's Davis. If I did classes through the extension, which is now known as CPE, continuing in professional education, that's listed as extension. So those are two different schools. So if you do some classes after you graduate at Davis through the CPE department, you would list that as the extension. Notice Berkeley has that as well. So you might have heard of Berkeley Extension. That's how you would list those classes. You went to Davis as an undergrad, Berkeley Extension classes would be a different school from Berkeley regular. Everybody clear on that? That's something that does mess people up from time to time. So Berkeley Extension is different than Berkeley. Davis Extension is different than Davis. Then they're going to get your high schools. I don't know why they need your high schools. They just ask for them. Transcript entry. See this right here? Professional transcript entry. What should you say to this? Yes or no? Thank you. No, 1,000 times no. Not about the money. It's about the fact that we have seen people do this and it completely jacks up their transcript entry and just gives them such a bad result, and they end up having to do it themselves anyway. It can dramatically delay getting your application in. It says it improves the accuracy of coursework entry. That's actually not our experience. So we suggest you say no, you're going to do it yourself. So let me start entering my transcripts. Now I'm not going to do the whole thing, but like I'm going to start with my first semester there, which was fall semester 91. My academic status was freshman. Now academic status, just base it on your year. So like some of you are like third or fourth years at Davis, but like if you're a third year, it might list you as a senior. Just call that your junior year. Academic status should be key to like what your first year is. First year freshman, second year sophomore, third year junior, fourth year and beyond senior. Notice there's some other options in here as well. Graduate, post-baccalaureate. If you're taking post-bac classes, you can do post-baccalaureate. If you're doing graduate classes, it'd be graduate. But first year, second year, third year, fourth and beyond. Completion status, we completed it. But you can also set up an in progress or planned quarter as well. So let's talk about that for just a moment. Let's say you have a class that you still need to take as a prereq. You can go ahead and tell them that you're going to be taking it in a future quarter by setting up a future in progress or planned quarter or semester or whatever it is, whatever school it is. So the nice thing about that is you don't have to have 100% of your prereqs done before you apply. You just have to have them done before you would matriculate. Some schools will actually say you have to have like all but one or two classes, and just pay attention to that so you don't fall foul of that. But if you still have a class or two to finish up prereq wise, you're not going to have to wait to apply. There's this choice for that reason. So add a course, the course code, maybe it's Chem 101. Wait, we don't do that. BIS 102A. I'm going to use this as an example. BIS 102A, course title, whatever it says on the transcript is what you choose here. Do not be creative. So if it says Gen Bio 1, then you put Gen Bio 1. Don't put General Biology 1. You just put Gen Bio 1. If it says some weird freaky thing like Gen Biol G1A or some crazy thing like that, type it exactly as it appears on your transcript. I cannot emphasize that enough. Type it exactly as it shows on your transcript. Because if you do not, it could mean they are going to invalidate that entry. And if you have 10 or more of those, your application might get bounced back for corrections. So enter it exactly as it appears on your transcript, your official transcript. Is everybody clear on that? This is important. We've seen people like do crazy stuff here. You took community college classes after graduation, fulfill prereqs. Were you graduated? Then yes, that would be considered post-baccalaureate. If you had your bachelor's degree in hand, that would be post-baccalaureate at a community college. The subject, Every system has its own list of subjects. Pick the subject that matches the best. So general biology, I'm probably just going to look for biology. They give me a bunch of different biology choices here. I'm just going to pick biology. It matches the best. If I had a chemistry class, let's go ahead and enter this one. How many units is the BIS 102A here? Like 4 units, I think. Don't do any converting because they do the converting for you. So just enter it as it shows on your transcript. So if you got A minus that you put in here, and you're not going to be able to enter anything for CAS grade because that's the way it's going to be reported. Some applications you might run into might do numerical grades. So if it was an 85, it's going to show up as a B. If it was some of them do grade point grades like 4 point or 3.15, weird stuff like that. That'll tell you what it translates into in the CAS. So it's set up to take a lot of different entries. For Davis specifically, it'll just take letter grades as written. To add a course, I'm going to put Chem 8A in here. That's organic chemistry. I don't remember exactly how it shows on the transcript, but organic chemistry. And notice if I put in chemistry in here, I have chemistry as a choice, but I also have organic chemistry. Some applications will show that as being separate. The one that has the least categories is AMCAS. Like AMCAS is not being very creative. They have basically very, very thin choices in there. Like they have biology, chemistry, physics, math, English, fine arts, history, and that's about, they don't have nearly the level that the liaison ones have. You can really granularize liaison. So biochemistry is chemistry. If you're going to do biochemistry on your AMCAS, put it as chemistry. On a liaison, put it as biochemistry. So best match is what you're going for. And that's what you got to do. That's the process to entering your transcripts. It's not complicated. It's tedious. It's going to take you some time, and just go through there. Now, some schools will ask you to do AP units. Got to look at the particular application to see where and how you do AP units. A lot of times what you'll just end up doing is I'll just do AP units in chemistry. Maybe I got some AP units in biology because I did an AP credit. If they transferred in, it would be 5 and it would have no grade. So it would just be pass. And then I'd have to put in some unit thing. I'll just call it AP. And I can save that. It just depends on the application how you would enter your AP units. But if you're going to enter AP units in, you would want to enter them in the first quarter that you're here, your first semester, first quarter, wherever they appear on your transcript. All right. So standardized tests. This is DAT, MCAT, all that stuff. The only system you do not have to manually enter your test scores into is AMCAS, because AMCAS is AAMC is the MCAT. But for all of the other application systems, you're going to have to add your score. So if I've taken the test, yes, I did it maybe, let's say I did it yesterday. I would put in my identifying number, my dent pin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know if that even would work. Yeah, it does. Put in my scores, save this test, and then I would have to make sure that I send the official score report. There's no way to send the score report from the application. You have to send the score report from when you take and register for the test, or when you or if you go back after you take the test and submit a score report in arrears. The only test you don't have to do that with is the MCAT for AMCAS. If you're applying DO, do I need to submit a test score report to COMAS for DO schools? Do I have to submit a score report? Yes. So for ACOMAS DO schools, I do need to submit a score report from MCAT to ACOMAS. The only application system, AMCAS, will work with MCAT. That's it. Every other one you got to submit. Everybody with me so far? We're good? Well, it's because DO schools, they're not part of AMCAS. AMCAS is part of AAMC, is part of MCAT. ACOMAS has nothing to do with AAMC nor the MCAT itself directly. So the only reason why AMCAS does it is because it's the same company. They have access to your records on both sides. All right. So go back to the main thing. That's the academic history. Supporting information. The second thing that I want you to set up when you start your application, this is shoot for, again, you can't just go right into it with your AMCAS application. You got to do all this other stuff first. Identify information, schools attended, biographic, coursework, work activities. You got to put your experiences in before you can put in your letters of evaluation or your letters of rec. This is where you would set up your recommenders. Here, you would do this under supporting information evaluation. That's the second most important thing to set up right away. So you would create your evaluation request. You're requesting committee or not. So some places do committee letters. Davis does not do a committee letter. Who the person is, what their email address is, when you want them to have the letter submitted, the message to the evaluator, but you want to make sure you're, asking these people first. Don't just assume they're willing to write your letter. Make sure you get their permission before you submit application or evaluation request to them. Yes, you can go back and make changes later on to sections you've previously entered. So that is something you can do, yeah. Now, this question is a very important question. I waive my right to access of this evaluation. What answer do you think they're wanting you to select? You waive your right. If you don't waive your right, that actually can raise some eyebrows at the application stage and say, what do they not trust about their evaluations? So I would pretty much say yes. I mean, it's your choice, but across the board, we suggest that you say yes here. You do need to give permission to contact, and you do need to contact the reference and for the school to contact reference. So the first one is for the application service to contact the reference. The second one is for the school to contact the reference. Once they're set up, this will submit an email to the recommender telling them you have requested a recommendation or an evaluation, and they will they'll get instructions of when and where and all that of how to do it. But again, do not surprise an evaluator by just sending this. You need to preface like all of this by getting their permission first. Otherwise, they'll be potentially offended and not want to do the evaluation for you. You will not get notified when schools receive DAT scores. Pretty much, it'll show up as part of your application. It'll show up like it is attached to your application, but beyond that, there's no like official notification that like such and such school received this. All right. So that's setting up your evaluations. That's an important step in this process. Again, those are the two first things. Transcripts and evaluations, I would make sure there's some of the first things I put priority on to make sure they're done. Then we can start putting in our experiences. You add an experience, what type, and every application has a different type of experience types, different numbers of experiences you can put in there, different number of experience or types of experiences you can highlight. When it comes to start dates, end dates, how often you do it, number of hours and things like that, literally the applications are going to be average weekly hours, number of weeks. So just make the math work out. because if it's something you did over the, say, the span of 2 years, but you didn't do it consistently, that's okay. Just set it up so that the hours work out. So like divide the hours by the total number of weeks in between. That way it just comes out to the correct total number of hours. As long as the hours are correct, it doesn't matter if they're distributed accurately. You can also point that out in the description as well. Why does it do a request for letters of rec and not just somewhere to attach? Does the AMC? All the applications do this because they're going to send an email to your recommenders asking them to submit and telling them where and when and how to submit. So it's actually preferential that they do that because they want to be able to get the application or the letters onto your application. In the past, when it was like physical or even when it was like not doing it this way, it was sometimes difficult to get the applications, the correct letters on the correct application. That was a problem. Interfolio, you would just end up setting up the interfolio address as a recommender. So Interfolio gives you instructions on how to add them as recommenders, your individual letters stored in there. However, I would say for Interfolio, you probably don't want to use all of your letters from Interfolio if they're too old. You want to have at least 1 or 2 current letters. So something that's dated with a current date, if possible. So Interfolio can only be used, by the way, for medical and dental applications. All the others, that's not a choice. So something that happens in experiences and personal statements and all of that. Let me answer this question first. Is there a max letters of rec you can request? It's different depending on the application. So yes, say AMCAS, you can have 10, but you can only submit up to 5 to each school. ACOMAS, you can have 5, but you can only submit, all of them get submitted to every school. It just depends on the application. That's more of an application specific question. When you're pasting your experiences and all your essays and stuff into your application, something to keep in mind is you probably don't want to just copy and paste from where you typed it up into the application, because things like Google Drive and all that, word processors, they put a lot of hidden characters into the text for formatting purposes. And so what I would suggest to do, instead of just copying and pasting it straight in, is copying and pasting into a notepad. So on Windows computers, it's, I believe, literally still called Notepad. Share that real quick. So it's just a basic plain text editor. So copy and paste from whatever you're starting with into here, into Notepad, and then see if there's any random phantom characters. Like you might see stuff like this. You probably have seen this before and not even realized it. They might do a caret 40, or there might be an ampersand NBSP semicolon that show up when you copy and paste from a word processor into a text editor like this. That stuff actually counts as characters if you were to paste it into your application. So go through with a notepad editor like this, and on Macs, I believe it's just called text, is the name of the text editor there. Go through and take all that junk out, then copy and paste from here into your application. That is a really easy way to make sure you're not going into character limits by accident. So I would encourage you to do that. Your hours reported are an estimate. Very few applications require you to document proof of your hours. If I'm remembering correctly, the only one I can think of off the top of my head is PT. PT, I believe, has to have some documented hours for experience. But for the rest of it, it's estimated. Like, get close. And if you're off by 10 or 15, nobody's going to care. You're off by 150, okay, that's an issue. They're probably going to question. And if you don't have a good contact, just put the best contact you have. Look somebody up current at that place or whatever it is. Just look up um, the best contact you can find, and that's okay. Because chances are they're probably not going to call these folks. And then there's achievement section. This is things like awards, publications. Again, it depends on the application exactly what these are going to look like. But again, any copy and pasting of text, do that via a text editor. Go from your word processor to text editor to the application. If you have licenses, this is probably, how many people out there have an EMT license? I bet there's at least one. That would be something I want to put on here. I want to add a license in here. Like other license, what the number is, it's an EMT license, blah, blah, blah. That's all good stuff to have in there. And then, of course, your personal statement. Personal statements are different for every application lengthwise. As you can see, like a dental application here, it's 4,500 characters. For the AMCAS and ACOMAS, it's 5,300 characters. Other applications, it varies pretty wildly from one application to the next. But again, copy into the text editor, copy into the text editor into here. So we're almost done. Like the application's almost done at this point. Now we have to add schools. And on the AMCAS application, that's this step. So you do add the medical schools before the essays and the standardized tests. I don't know why they do it that way, but they do. So you'd add your med schools here at this step. Over here, you do program material, add a program. So I would select all the schools that I plan on applying to. Let's say I add this one and I add this one and continue. And it's going to bring me to the screen and say, here's all the schools that I plan on applying to. And there's the deadlines. Here's the fees that are going to be associated with it. It's not going to charge you right then and there. Neither will the AMC. But what ends up happening is once I've selected my programs, now I go into program materials. And this may also happen. This will also happen on the AMCAS. You might have some additional materials to enter in there. You go to different programs, they'll tell you a little bit about the program. And they'll say some additional questions. Do we have close ties to South Carolina? That's what they're interested in at this school. Additional documentation. So they want official, unofficial score reports. Other stuff they might request. Okay, now I have to enter my prerequisites. And this is pretty much a liaison only thing. You do not have to earmark your prerequisites in AMCAS, but you do in for specific programs for all the other liaison applications. So I would go into my transcript entry and then do that, make sure all those things are in there, finalize my transcripts. Then I could start picking the classes that fit these categories. So that's very much a specific to liaison application. You earmark the particular classes you want them to use for your prereqs. But notice, this program has different questions. This one's got questions like Ohio residency status, matriculation eligibility requirements, text message opt-in, documentation they want, blah, blah, blah. They might do the same thing, prerequisites. So each school can have different things you're going to enter on your liaison app. So what this is what are called supplemental applications. These are application materials that will be submitted as part of your primary application, supplemental. Your liaison apps do supplementals. Your AMCAS app does what are called secondaries. When do secondaries come? Do I do them when I submit or do I do them later? I do those later. So I'll be emailed after I submit my primary and get those. So basically, you're doing your secondaries at the same time as you're doing your primaries with the liaison apps. You're getting your secondary applications later when you're doing your AMCAS. So it's a subtly different system. Once all that's done, You want to go here to submit. You got it, and you can submit each school individually. This is true for AMCAS as well. You do not need to submit all of your schools at once. You can submit, and we do encourage you to not submit all your schools at once. We suggest you submit schools in rounds. Like 3 rounds is reasonable, say for pre-meds. You're going to do like 20 plus schools. Do your California schools first. Do those secondaries, because you might also get secondaries, by the way, from a liaison school. You can get supplementals and secondaries. Fun times. But do like a California round. Do a not California round, but I really want. And then do a not California, but I don't necessarily want round. That way you can just get those secondaries turned back in a reasonable amount of time. These days for secondaries, if a school's going to send secondaries, they're probably going to send them regardless. Sometimes if your stats are low enough, you might get filtered out. But a lot of schools just, it feels like they're just pretty much sending secondaries right away. Sometimes we occasionally see some schools send out secondaries before you've even submitted. They see that they're added to your application and they'll send you a secondary already. So you can't really gauge on secondaries anymore on whether or not you're filtered, because a lot of schools will send secondaries regardless. And then, of course, both systems have a check progress or check status to see where's your application at. Do you had a decision? So this is your portal here. And then each individual school is going to have a portal for your application. That's pretty much the norm these days. So in a nutshell, that's how these applications work. I mean, AMCAS, it's all the same stuff. It's just in a different order, and you're forced to do it in this order. So if you like basically AMCAS, just day one, start working your way through this. And the key ones to get, what are the 2 sections that you want to get on the fastest on all your apps? What are the 2 sections you want to get on your applications? Regardless, transcripts and evaluations. Those are like, you want to beeline it towards those. With AMCAS, you got to work your way there. But those, because those pose the biggest potential slowdowns in your application. Because if your transcripts aren't making it or your evaluations aren't making it, they can slow down the progress of your application through the application cycle, and that's not something you want. I don't know why AMCAS has you do it in order. It's just the way they've chosen to put their application together. And like, it's also weird that like literally all of the other application systems use Liaison. Like this is AdSAS. This is Vimcast. It's also on Liaison. Looks basically the same, and so on and so forth. So all of the other applications that I don't know of any others that don't use Liaison. Pretty much the universal outside of AMCAS. And I did forget to mention one, TMD SAS. If you're applying to Texas schools that are not part of AMCAS or ACOMAS or say Vimcast, there are some Texas schools that do use these other systems. But if you're applying to Texas schools, make sure you've got a good reason to be applying to those schools. They also require a whole different system called TMD SAS, which it's very similar to this, but it's specific only to Texas schools, Texas vet, dental, and medical schools. In most Texas schools, there are some good Texas schools to look at, like Incarnate Word. They use ACOMAS though, and Texas Christian, they use AMCAS. But a lot of the other Texas schools, they're much more restricted in who they'll accept unless you've got a close state connection to Texas. So before you decide not to apply to Texas, it might help talking to an advisor just to see if there might be some schools on your school list that would be relevant down there. No, you would only put it on there once because you can select freshmen or like, yeah, your high school class would be freshmen and then post back for the other ones because you can list the classes as different levels at the same school. All right. So hopefully we cleared up some questions about how these applications work. I know that there's so much more to it than that. And I'm sure questions are going to rise once we start doing this, but that's where we have drop-ins and, we can help clear that up. If you're using the GPA calculator that we have on our website, I've set that up to use the actual course lists from the uh, websites that do the application. So they should match straight up with what you're going to put on to your application. So if you want to get a jump on that, use the GPA calculator to figure out what exactly you're going to put on your application. Which is yeah, the AMCAS opens May 1st for entry and June-ish 1st. It's usually June 1st for submission. Comas opens May for entry and submission, I believe. So key dates 2024. Yeah, they opened in May for submission, entry and submission. Again, every application, by the way, is a little bit different. So all the deadlines and stuff depend on the application. So some cycles are little shifted versus others. Also pay attention to things like, are they rolling admissions versus standard admissions or early admission, all that fun stuff too. All right, well, let's call it a day. And if there's anything else, just come to drop-ins or set up some appointments and we'll answer your questions there too.